Mutual News. President Reagan was shot and wounded in the chest this afternoon as he walked from a hotel in Washington after making a speech to a labor convention. His news secretary, James Brady, was shot in the head and apparently seriously wounded. Both the president and Brady are at George Washington Hospital in Washington, where the president is reported to have undergone surgery. Mr. Reagan apparently at first did not know he had been hit. He walked into the hospital. Mutual's Bill Grudy was on the scene at the Washington Hilton Hotel when the shooting took place.
Looks like spokesman James Brady is on the ground, shot in the head. Man is being rustled to the ground. I see three shot, three on the ground. Three people are on the ground. A man is being wrestled to the ground. 5, 6, 7 Secret Service agents are around him. Brady is on the ground. I see blood on his head.
Bullets also hit a Secret Service officer and a Washington, D.C. police officer. A suspect in custody has been identified as 22-year-old John Hinckley of Evergreen, Colorado. This is news from Mutual Radio. Bob Moore reporting.
The Bell System brings you the Oak Ridge Boys.
Y'all give your faraway friends a call. Else, how they gonna know you care?
Reach out and touch someone. Reach out, call up and just say hi. Reach out and touch someone.
Wherever you are, you're never too far. They're waiting to share your day.
Reach out and touch someone.
The sun is a thief. It can rob your car's vinyl, rubber, and leather of its beauty, luster, of its value. Stop that thief with STP's new Son of a Gun with sunscreen. That's right, sunscreen. It's the only vinyl protector with an exclusive sunscreen formula that screens out the sun's damaging rays. STP's Son of a Gun with sunscreen shines brighter, protects longer, and leaves a fresh, clean scent. Don't let the sun rob you blind.
News Secretary James Brady is apparently in serious condition with a bullet wound in the head in the aftermath of this afternoon's assassination attempt on President Reagan outside a hotel in Washington. Mutual's Ross Simpson reports from George Washington Hospital in Washington.
Jim Brady was almost lifeless as his body was wheeled past me in the hallway here just outside the cat room. That's the computerized scanning room for the brain. An intern who has seen the pictures of Jim Brady's brain says the prognosis is not good. The bullet has done extensive damage in the brain area.
Correspondent Ross Simpson reporting from the hospital where Brady is under treatment. President Reagan, who's under treatment for a chest wound at the same hospital, had just finished a speech to a labor convention at the Washington Hilton when the assassination attempt was made. He told the group inflation caused too big a government has made a mockery of the tax system.
There are just too many people in this town who thinks this money belongs to the government. Well, it doesn't. It's your money. It's your sons' and daughters' money that they're hoping to use for a new home. It's your parents' money that they need for a decent retirement. And if we do nothing else in this administration, we're going to convince this city that the power, the money, and the responsibility in this country begins and ends with the people and not with some cinder block building in Washington, D.C.
President Reagan addressing a labor convention just prior to the assassination attempt. You're listening to Mutual News.
Announcing TWA's new Anywhere fare. From April 20th to May 31st, fly anywhere in the U.S. we fly for $149 or less each way when you fly round trip. Kids go for $49 or less. Seats are limited and restrictions apply. TWA's new Anywhere fare. Now everyone can see what makes America beautiful.
Think of a subject, any subject, and I can tell you how to learn more about it. This is Ken Howard, and I guarantee you'll like this terrific open classroom that's right in your own neighborhood. It's your library. You just walk right in and ask for books on any subject that interests you, whether it's basketball, basket weaving, or the mystery of the Baskervilles. You name it, the library has it. The library really has your number. This open classroom is a great mind expander. Try it yourself and see.
A public service message of the American Library Association.
Repeating this afternoon's developments, President Reagan was shot and wounded in the chest this afternoon as he walked from the Washington Hilton Hotel. Mr. Reagan is reported in stable condition at George Washington Hospital in Washington. The gunfire also wounded White House News Secretary Jim Brady. This is Bob Moore, Mutual News.
This is Dick Rosse, Mutual News, Washington, with continuing coverage of the near assassination of President Reagan this afternoon. Here's what we have so far if you're just joining us. President Reagan was shot in the chest by a young gunman today. He underwent emergency surgery. He's undergoing emergency surgery right now at George Washington University Hospital and is reported in stable condition. The assailant is identified as John Warnock Hinckley, Jr., 22, of Evergreen, Colorado. He was wrestled to the ground in front of the Washington Hilton Hotel and promptly arrested. Vice President George Bush was ordered to return from a speaking engagement in Texas. Earlier, Bush had addressed the Southwestern Cattle Raisers Convention in Fort Worth. He was plugging the administration's economic policies at the time. We are going to be going back to the White House in a few moments. Larry Speaks, who is a presidential spokesman, will be briefing reporters, and, of course, we'll be carrying Mr. Speaks live. Hopefully, we'll have some kind of indication of President Reagan's condition. We have Ross Simpson on the line, who is stationed at George Washington University Hospital. Ross, do you have anything late for us? Ross Simpson, are you there?
Yes, Dick.
What's going on at the hospital at this moment?
Just outside, a rather large group has been here throughout most of the afternoon. As I rushed across the street through the rain, several people standing under umbrellas because it is raining quite hard here in Washington now. And this thing had a sort of a historical note to it. You were around when John F. Kennedy, the attack on John F. Kennedy in Dallas came. You know the reaction of people when you assault a president or assault a public figure. People sort of band together. Small bands now are standing along 23rd Street, around Washington Circle, around the other avenues and streets that intersect the hospital here, clutching transistor radios, listening to reports such as this one, listening to other reports for any bit of information. They're grabbing people as they go by. What do you hear about the president? What about the others who were shot? Briefly, we can tell you that the president is still in surgery. Mr. Brady, his presidential secretary, is also in surgery. The prognosis for Mr. Brady is not good. The prognosis for Mr. Reagan, we don't know. It is a question mark at this point. He will undergo, with all likelihood, and I say with all likelihood because this is normal procedure for this type of a wound, he will undergo a thoracotomy, which is open chest surgery. It is a serious operation. It will take 1 to 4 hours, depending upon the internal damage that this bullet has done.
Ross, excuse me, earlier you spoke about blood transfusions and a large amount of O-negative blood which was made available to him. How much blood did the president lose? Do we know that?
We don't know, but it's like a leak, and we don't know the extent of the leak now, but they did make available 30 units of O-negative blood. That was drawn from the blood bank here at the hospital and rushed up to the surgical suite. Perhaps he may need more. We just don't know at this point. But you've got to keep that wound open. It must bleed until such time that they can assess the damage. Now, a doctor that I talked to told me that they will start introducing clotting agents in the president's bloodstream. He will be on a respirator during the surgical procedure because they must keep the right lung fully inflated. It must do double duty as that left lung area is repaired. And these clotting agents hopefully will stop much of the bleeding. If they don't, then they've got a problem.
We won't know that, of course, for some time. Are you in a position where you can get the information immediately and give it to us? Because that, of course, is where the story is, where you are. Anytime between an hour and 4, I guess, before we know what the outcome of the surgery is. He is 70 years old, as you mentioned in your last report, but a remarkable physical specimen considering his age, in excellent physical health, but this kind of trauma to anybody at any age would be worrisome, to say the least.
It is a very difficult procedure, to say the least, Dick. It's a very serious operation. The president has suffered a traumatic wound. Not as serious, perhaps, in medical terms as the wound that his presidential news secretary suffered in the head. But nevertheless, it is serious, and there is a somber mood here at George Washington University Hospital in Washington as the surgery continues.
Thanks very much, Ross. Don't hesitate to ring us back, and please do immediately, as soon as we have any information at all on the president's condition or on Jim Brady's condition from George Washington University Hospital. Thanks, Ross. Vice President Bush canceled plans to address the Texas legislature, and I guess he's flying back right now to Washington. He, of course, made that decision upon hearing of President Reagan's shooting. I'd say he looks like he's in total control of himself, says Texas Secretary of State George Strait after meeting with Bush aboard Air Force Two as it stopped to refuel at Robert Mueller Municipal Airport in Austin, Texas. Secretary of State Alexander Haig briefed White House reporters at the briefing room within the hour, and he was a little bit vague on the Vice President's return to Washington. We estimate anywhere between 6:30 and 8:30 this evening. What his role will be when he arrives is problematical. The President was conscious when he went into surgery. He actually walked into the hospital under his own power, and we can all pray that by the time Vice President Bush arrives, the President will be out of surgery, conscious again, and we won't have to go through the ordeal and the trauma of a transfer of power. However, most of the cabinet officials have been at the White House streaming in and out all afternoon, and the wheels of motion, of course, will continue. If you're joining us, it sounds very repetitive to us, but of course there always are new listeners to the network. The President was shot this afternoon in the chest area, and the bullet, a single bullet, came close to his heart, did not hit the heart, an inch or so away from it, but it did collapse the left lung. He is undergoing surgery at this time. Blood is being administered. Surgery, according to Ross Simpson, Mutual's man at George Washington University Hospital, says the operation could last anywhere from an hour to 4 hours. Of equal concern, and where the prognosis is worse, is concerning presidential spokesman Jim Brady, the jovial briefing officer, a marvelous man, quite young, who was part of the President's entourage leaving the Washington Hilton this afternoon, got caught in that explosion of fire. 5 or 6 shots were fired, all at close range, by a young man, 22 years old, from Green Tree, I believe it is, Evergreen, Colorado. He was identified as John Warnick Hinckley, 22, who got surprisingly and tragically close to the President. He managed to pull off several shots before he was subdued by the Secret Service, and he is under arrest. We have no information at this time what compelled him to do this, and the FBI, we are told, has undertaken a complete investigation. Mutual will stay with the story as long as it takes. Of course, the crucial aspect to the story is the President's survivability. And there is a vigil outside of George Washington University Hospital. Hundreds of people are just milling about, remembering November 22nd, 1963, of course. However, we don't want to make it sound that ominous. The President was reported in stable condition, and we will keep our fingers crossed and we will say our prayers. The New York Stock Exchange and the American Stock Exchange stopped their trading this afternoon following the reports of the shooting. Prices were in a tailspin at the time. Trading diminished rapidly following the shooting incident. Presidential Press Secretary James Brady and the other 2 men, a Washington, D.C. policeman and a Secret Service man, were injured. The Secret Service man is reported in critical condition, and the D.C. policeman had a neck wound. He's in serious condition. Again, if you're interested in such things, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down in afternoon trading. Bill Grudy is at the White House. Do you have anything late for us, Bill?
Nothing late. The story here still is... I can't hear myself in my earphones. Am I on?
Yes, you are, Bill.
Okay. The story here at this point is that who is in charge at this point now that the President is in surgery? And the situation is that, as you said, Vice President Bush is returning from Texas. Right now, Alexander Haig, Secretary of State Haig, and Foreign Policy Advisor Richard Allen, a number of other cabinet members have gathered here, and they are taking care of the reins of power at this point, although officials say nothing has been done officially to transfer power. But I can't help but see how that will have to happen. The surgery that the President is undergoing is certainly going to require a time of recuperation, and there's going to have to be somebody who is going to run the show, so I presume that by the time the day is out, there will be some decision made to turn the reins over to George Bush, at least on a temporary basis. We're waiting now for spokesman Larry Speaks, who was supposed to come and brief us on the latest information. He's about 10 minutes overdue. We'll keep you informed as soon as we know the latest from him.
Bill, there's a kind of awful irony in the fact that such a brouhaha was made of the establishment of a crisis management team, not an establishment, I guess the position had existed in the power struggle between Alexander Haig and George Bush. Who would have thought that we're possibly close to implementing the terms of the crisis management team?
Well, in fact, they have been implemented. The crisis management team is the one that is supervising the reins of government at this point, and it is in effect at this time.
All right, Bill, we'll be watching with you for Larry Speaks, who you say is 10 minutes overdue, obviously waiting for a report from the hospital, because that's what everybody wants to hear about. Do you suppose that's what's accounting for the delay?
I think that's it, too, and more details of, again, who was in charge, who was running the show at this point, who is the acting president of the United States while the president is under anesthesia.
Who's at the White House now? Is Secretary Haig still
Secretary
there?
Haig, National Security Advisor Richard Allen, and a handful of cabinet officers. I haven't been told exactly who they are, but 5 or 6 cabinet officers, and I wouldn't be surprised that if every cabinet officer who is in Washington, D.C. is in the White House, they're in the Situation Room, which has kind of become the hub of activity here for monitoring the situation.
What happened between 2 and 3 this afternoon when everybody in the nation, all TV and all radio stations, went on the air assuring everyone the president was not shot? It came from the White House press room. Was it the kind of error that can be made in a
Sure.
chaotic situation like this?
Well, I was right there, and there was no way to tell that the president had been shot. He was pushed down by the agents, and he was pushed into the limousine, and it looked as though he was getting in under his own power, of course, with the assistance of the agents, but really basically under his own power. And there was no indication whatsoever. It had looked as though the gunman had been deflected by the Secret Service agents, and the shots that he had intended for Mr. Reagan had hit Press Secretary Brady, the D.C. police officer, and the other Secret Service agent.
Bill, you were the pool radio reporter at
Yes.
the time, were you not? You were the only radio person there,
Well,
actually.
not the only one there, but the only one who had a tape recorder rolling at that point.
How close were you to the assailant?
I would say I was about 15 feet. I was right close there.
Did you notice him beforehand? Was he mingling with
No,
the
you
press
see,
people?
we all came. Oh, it's hard to tell. There's a brick wall outside the Hilton Hotel, and there was a rope set up next to that wall behind which the press was to stand. And it looks as though, from the way I viewed it, that the gunman had pre-positioned himself next to the wall. I had just walked out the door as the shots were fired, and I took a quick glance, and I saw this guy there. And then all of a sudden, in the next second, 5 or 10 Secret Service agents were on top of him. And so it was hard to tell, but it looked as though he had positioned himself between the rope and the wall, either masquerading as a reporter, or, although there are no signs he had phony credentials, he had no credentials on whatsoever. He just was able to squeeze himself in among the crowd and off to the edge there.
He was on the other side of the police cordon.
Yes. Well, there was no cordon as such. The president was coming out a small exit, and the crowd kind of spilled over toward the edge of his limousine. So it's possible that he got in the edge of the crowd and then just kind of worked his way over slowly. In the confusion of the president coming out, he slipped in toward the press line, fired his shots, and that was that.
At very close range.
The press area began, and the public area, where the public area began and the press area began, were very close, and it would seem that it would be very easy for somebody to bleed over from there.
Yeah, what kind of weapon was it? We haven't heard anything
well,
about that.
This is kind of a subject of discussion. I have not heard anything official. I have heard some people say a .22, but the shots that I heard sounded more like a .38. I've heard .22 shots before, and they sound like a little firecracker. But this had that deeper, more throaty ring, and looking at the weapon on the ground, which we are told possibly was the weapon, it looked too big to be a .22. And that's what gives me the grave concern for Jim Brady's condition, because a .38 caliber round at that location, at that distance, and the assailant, as I said, was only 6 or 7 feet from Brady, could be very, very deadly indeed.
And, of course, the same for the president. The bullet did miss his heart, we understand.
Mm-hmm. It's a bullet of that size. There's speculation that it ricocheted off the brick wall, and that's not an unrealistic or unreasonable speculation, again, when you realize that this gunman was only 15 feet from the president.
Yeah.
And, again, the .38 is a pretty powerful weapon.
Well, they're going to be asking a lot of questions, and it's probably premature, maybe even distasteful to get into them this early, but he got an awful lot of shots off before he was subdued.
Yes, well, I to tell you, I heard 3, but later I was told that other people had heard 6. And I saw the agents jump. I know I heard the last shot, and I know that that man was smothered on the ground within seconds after that. Not even seconds, maybe a half a second after that last shot was fired. The agents were right on top of him.
Shots were also fired at the limousine.
Yeah, apparently there was a bullet hole in the limousine, I'm told. Apparently the bullet that struck the president was either deflected or somehow. That's the theory. Again, you never know until you reconstruct the scene. You go over this with ballistics experts. It's easy to speculate, but you can very easily be wrong. Don't forget, they were firing in an area where there was a brick wall. So the shots could have bounced off the wall. There are any number of possible combinations. It's very, very, very difficult to say.
All right, so they got him to the ground, and they immediately took him away, obviously.
Well, not immediately. What happened was I would say 5 or 6 agents wrestled the president to the ground. And not the president, I'm sorry, the suspect. And at that time, it was not clear whether there was one suspect or two. Now, this is a usual procedure that they form a mound. It looks almost like a football, in a football game when somebody's tackled, that there are Secret Service agents on top of them. And I'm told that this is to prevent anybody who might be in the area, a second gunman. For example, if it was a team effort and there is one gunman whose job it is to shoot one assassin, and then in the event he is caught, a second gunman is to shoot him. This is to prevent the second gunman from getting that shot off. And so there are all these agents in a mound on top of the suspect, and I would say it seemed like 5 minutes, although in a situation like that, time has a way of telescoping itself.
Yeah, of course.
And it seemed like an awfully long time before the police paddy wagon got there and they hauled the guy off.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting now for Larry Speaks at the White House, where you're at.
Right. And so far, no Speaks yet.
Yeah, all right. We have to tell our listeners this. We have information, a little bit of the background of the suspect. The man in custody attended elementary and high schools in affluent Highland Park before his family moved to Evergreen, Colorado. That's Texas. He attended John S. Armstrong Elementary School and was a 1973 graduate of Highland Park High School. And Hinckley lived with his family on Beverly Street in Highland Park, a street of large, fine homes. At least one woman who knew the family, however, said the Hinckley's were not wealthy. The woman who asked not to be identified said Hinckley's father was in the oil business, but he wasn't rich. Highland Park police said Hinckley was not a known character to them and had no known arrest record. All we know is that he's 22 years old, white, blondish, sandy-colored hair, about 5'10", and his name, and obviously nothing about possible motivation. Bill, are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry,
that's all right.
Dazed by the afternoon's events.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to end this coverage in a minute or so, or do I still have another 5? Much of the action is this traumatic afternoon. Secretary of State Haig briefed reporters earlier, as did Larry Speaks. What they're obviously waiting for, the people of the White House, is for some kind of power to give the newsmen who are primarily interested in the condition of President Reagan, and, of course, Press Secretary Jim Brady, who was also injured and very seriously injured in that attack this afternoon in front of the Washington Hilton Hotel. The president was there at the hotel addressing the union construction workers, a branch of the AFL-CIO, and it started as a routine speech. It started as a routine day. He made a big push, of course, for his economic program, and I believe we even have a piece of tape of that appearance that President Reagan, just maybe 45 minutes before the shooting this afternoon, as he was addressing the trade unionists at the Washington Hilton Hotel. And let's listen to that now.
There are just too many people in this town who thinks this money belongs to the government. Well, it doesn't. It's your money. It's your sons and daughters' money that they're hoping to use for a new home. It's your parents' money that they need for a decent retirement. And if we do nothing else in this administration, we're going to convince this city that the power, the money, and the responsibility in this country begins and ends with the people and not with some cinder block building in Washington, D.C.
President Reagan got a rather warm response from the AFL-CIO at the Washington Hilton this afternoon. A few minutes after that speech, he went outside and was shot and wounded by by a young man who is now in police custody. One of the other people wounded in that shooting was a D.C. police officer. And Michua's John Bascom, who normally covers Capitol Hill, is at D.C. Police Headquarters, and we have a report from him now.
45-year-old Thomas Delahanty, a 17-year veteran with the District of Columbia Police Department, was one of 3 people shot in the attack on President Reagan. Delahanty is a canine officer with the outside presidential security detail. He's listed in critical condition. District of Columbia Police spokesman Joe Gentile says that the suspected assassin, John Hinckley, is being held for the time being at police headquarters. But Gentile indicated that the suspect would be moved. He did not say when that move might occur or where the suspect would be taken. John Bascom, Mutual News, at police headquarters in Washington.
And we have a little more information about the suspect, information we passed along a few minutes ago, but in case you missed it, he attended elementary and high schools in Highland Park, Texas. I believe that's a Dallas suburb. He attended John S. Armstrong Elementary School and was a 1973 graduate of Highland Park High School. The area is wealthy, affluent, but apparently, and according to neighbors, the Hinckley family was not noted for its wealth. A woman who asked not to be identified said Hinckley's father was in the oil business, but he was not rich. We, of course, at this time have no information on why he would pull that small caliber pistol and open up at the President of the United States this afternoon, his press secretary, a District of Columbia policeman, and a Secret Service agent, all 4 of whom are wounded. And President Reagan is undergoing surgery. Our man at George Washington University Hospital, Ross Simpson, says the operation could last anywhere from an hour to 4. It's at least an hour now. There is a problem in view of the president's internal bleeding and a collapsed lung, and the fact he is 70 years old, but still, considering his age, in excellent health. A trauma for him, trauma for the nation, a trauma for the world. As we await word from the White House, Larry Speakes, who has promised us a briefing with late information on the president's condition and on the condition, of course, of Jim Brady, the affable, most likely witty, urbane, charming press secretary who normally conducts the White House briefings. He was shot at very close range, perhaps 8 to 10 feet away, in the forehead, and the prognosis on Mr. Brady is quite poor at this time. Mrs. Brady is at the hospital. We understand that her composure is good. Mrs. Reagan is at George Washington University Hospital, not in the operating room. She's waiting for word. She's waiting for her husband, the President of the United States, to return to his room. Incredibly, the President had been shot without even knowing it, as we understand it. He was pushed into the limousine, actually walked into the hospital, was fully conscious all the time, and did, as we learned later, suffer a considerable loss of blood. Something like 30 units of O-negative blood were made available. Whether he received all 30 units, we don't know. We presume that most of it was just there in the event that it was necessary. President Reagan, now under surgery to remove a bullet which is lodged on the left side of his chest, quite near his heart, at George Washington University Hospital. The operation could end any moment, could go on through the early evening. In the meantime, Vice President George Bush is en route back to Washington to head the President's Crisis Management Committee, a post that he was just nominated or appointed to earlier this week, or latter part of last week, I should say. So this is continuous mutual news coverage of the attempt on President Reagan's life this afternoon. We'll be with you through the remainder of the afternoon and through the evening, as long as it takes to complete this very sad and most dramatic story. This is Dick Rossay, Mutual News.
Mutual News. At this hour, President Reagan is undergoing emergency surgery at George Washington University Hospital in Washington. Reagan was shot and wounded this afternoon by a gunman outside a Washington hotel. The bullet struck Reagan in the left chest. He is reported to be in good condition. News Secretary Jim Brady, a Secret Service agent, and a Washington, D.C. policeman were also wounded. All 3 went into surgery. Brady and Agent Timothy McCarthy are reported in critical condition. Secretary of State Haig spoke late this afternoon to reporters at the White House. He was asked who is running the government.
Constitutionally, gentlemen, you have the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary of State in that order. And should the President decide he wants to transfer the helm to the Vice President, he will do so. As of now, I am in control here in the White House, pending return of the Vice President, and in close touch with him. If something came up, I would check with him, of course.
Secretary of State Haig will be joined by Vice President Bush later this evening. Bush is being rushed back to Washington from Texas. This is news from Mutual Radio. Sally Beckner reporting.
The sun is a thief. It can rob your car's vinyl, rubber, and leather of its beauty, luster, of its value. Stop that thief with STP's new son of a gun with sunscreen. That's right, sunscreen. It's the only vinyl protector with an exclusive sunscreen formula that screens out the sun's damaging rays. STP's son of a gun with sunscreen. Shines brighter, protects longer, leaves a fresh, clean scent. Don't let the sun rob you blind.
Rodney Dangerfield for Pilot Pen.
I don't get no respect. I park my car. The cop says, "This your car?" I say, "Sure." Then "This is your ticket." Then he can't find his pen. Writes me a ticket with my pilot pen. Then someone yells police. He takes off. I get a ticket. He gets my pilot pen. I tell you got to hold on to it with two hands. And the price. The pilot fine liner, 79 cents. The razor point, only 89 cents. You want respect? Get your own pilot pen.
The Secret Service has identified President Reagan's assailant as 22-year-old John Hinckley of Evergreen, Colorado. The sandy-haired man was immediately hustled into custody by agents after at least 4 gunshots were fired at the presidential party. Sam LaFata, a steel worker from Warren, Michigan, was waiting outside the Washington Hilton Hotel to get a picture of the president. He says he was standing right in front of the assailant.
I wasn't aware really something going on, except when that one policeman, there was a police lieutenant out there that kept looking over my shoulder at this guy. And I mean, kept looking at him for a minute or so. And evidently he saw something there that he didn't like, or he saw something he must have, thought was wrong.
Eyewitness Carol Pierce of Columbus, Ohio, was also in a position to see the assassination attempt unfold.
Well, I was standing right in front, and all of a sudden this arm comes out over my right-hand shoulder, and I saw this dark-sleeved person with a gun, and I heard 2 shots and saw the gun go off twice, and then I ran like a jackrabbit out of there.
Eyewitness to the assassination attempt, Carol Pierce. Today's assassination attempt came on the 70th day of the Ronald Reagan's presidency. The president was wounded in the left chest as he left the Washington Hilton Hotel after addressing the AFL-CIO Buildings Trades Convention. You're listening to Mutual News.
Everywhere, people are discovering the variety of Amway quality products without going shopping.
My laundry looks great with Amway SA8.
Nutrilite food bars by Amway get this teacher through the morning.
Artistry Cosmetics and Jewelry by Amway get me through the evening.
Yes, Amway has it all. Contact an Amway distributor and get the whole story.
Shop the world of Amway, so easy to do.
Every year, a lot of State Farm policyholders move. But not many of them move away from State Farm Insurance. Because the kind of good value and good neighbor service they want is there just about anywhere they relocate. They stay with State Farm for a good price and good neighbor service for their life, health, homeowners, and car insurance. You can expect the same when you call the State Farm agent near you.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The highest-ranking members of Ronald Reagan's cabinet, including Secretary of State Haig and Defense Secretary Weinberger, are awaiting developments at the White House after this afternoon's assassination attempt. Vice President Bush is being rushed back to Washington from Texas. His plane is expected to arrive at 7 Eastern Standard Time. This is Sally Beckner, Mutual News.
This is Dick Rossay, continuing with our coverage of the attempt on President Reagan's life. Moments ago, presidential spokesman Larry Speakes began a briefing at the White House. Let's go to him live. We understand Mr. Speakes is at the Speaker's platform. However, we're having difficulty getting the audio from the White House briefing room. Everyone, of course, wants to hear the condition of President Reagan, who is undergoing surgery at this moment at George Washington University Hospital. The president was shot in the chest today by a gunman firing from close range outside of the Washington Hilton Hotel. He was reported in good condition and underwent surgery to remove the small caliber bullet that was lodged close to his heart on the left side of his chest. The gunman was identified by the Secret Service as John Warnick Hinckley, Jr., 22, whose address currently is Evergreen, Colorado. We understand he is a graduate of the elementary school and high school system of Highland Park, Texas, near Dallas. A Secret Service agent and a Washington, D.C. policeman also were wounded in the shooting outside of the Washington Hilton. Reagan's political aide, Lynn Nofsinger, said the president was shot once in the left chest, but he was conscious. He was talking and in stable condition and walked into the hospital. Of course, reaction is flooding in, much of it from Capitol Hill, much of it from world capitals. Senator Edward Kennedy, who lost 2 brothers to an assassin, said, "With our prayers for those who have been wounded, I think must go our resolution to end our society of hatred. Violence and hatred are alien to everything this country is about," he said. Senator Claiborne Pell, the Rhode Island Democrat, said the general atmosphere of all of us is one of shock and horror. He said news of the assassination of President John Kennedy seemed like only a month ago. Senator Henry Jackson, who was a friend of President Kennedy, a former presidential candidate himself, said, "We're reminded once again of how dangerous this world is. Again, our hopes are dashed that violence once again would not visit an American president." That's from Scoop Jackson. Obviously, the shooting suspect, had to be a fanatic, he said. The nation's 2 major stock exchanges, the New York and American, halted trading after receiving word of the shooting. The market went into a tailspin. The Dow Jones, of course, closed the day considerably on the downside. We, at this moment, are waiting for word from the George Washington University Hospital, where President Reagan is undergoing surgery, a procedure that could last anywhere between an hour and 4 hours, very delicate surgery to open his chest, to relieve the bleeding and remove the small caliber bullet, which is lodged in the left side of his chest area. It collapsed the lung. And the prognosis for the president is good, we've been told. However, for his press secretary, Jim Brady, the prognosis is very poor. He was struck at very close range in the forehead. He is, I don't believe there's been an official hospital bulletin on Brady's condition, but we can presume that it is critical. We are waiting for word from the White House, from Mutual's Bill Grudy, and from Larry Speaks, who's handling the chore of briefing reporters on the nation, a nation that is concerned, hopeful, prayerful that the president will recover from this. Vice President George Bush is airbound en route back to Washington from a speaking engagement in Texas. He should be back in the Capitol sometime early this evening. He will immediately confer with Secretary of State Haig, spend most of his time at the White House, of course. There has to be, government has to continue. And Vice President Bush was just selected last week by the president to head his crisis management team. Bill Grudy is in a much better position to clarify the succession matter, and we'll go to Bill now at the White House if you're listening to us, Bill.
Sure I am, Dick. It did seem to be a conflict when Secretary of State Haig said that the succession was the President, Vice President, and the Secretary of State, because we all know that in the event of the death of the President and the death of the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, Speaker pro tem of the Senate, I believe that's how the succession goes. But as long as the President is alive, it is his administration, and it is up to him to delegate who is in charge. And as long as the President is alive and is not about to transfer power, their power is not about to be transferred permanently, well, then the situation is different. The succession stays within the administration. And this is why Secretary of State Haig is now the person who is in charge. He and Richard Allen, other members of the cabinet, are the ones who are actually running the government, while Vice President Bush is airborne to return to Washington to at least temporarily assume the reins of power. I don't know, and I don't believe that requires any kind of formal ceremony. It simply it's the same situation as if the president had come down with a bad case of the flu. That then Vice President Bush would step in and fulfill his obligations, and there would be no transfer of power.
Bill, Larry Speaks did appear briefly in the briefing room a moment ago. Did he? Did he not? I thought we heard that he had.
No, he did not. You may have seen or heard some sound from here that was a recording of his previous appearance here. I would suspect, since the president is in surgery, that they're kind of putting everything on hold for a couple of minutes to wait and see to exactly where they stand. You heard him say before that he wanted to make sure everything was okay before coming out again, or at least he had a confirmed, hard, solid story to tell us.
Yeah. Who's at the White House now besides Secretary of State Haig? I presume he's still there.
Secretary of State Haig and a handful of cabinet members. I haven't been watching them go in and come out, so I can't tell you who, but I'm told that a handful of cabinet members again. Richard Allen. I'd like to mention at this point, the CBS TV network is now reporting that James Brady has died. I'd like to attribute that to them, but that is the report going here, and in the interest of getting information out as quickly as we can.
We'll try to confirm that through
we
Ross
should try
Simpson
and check it. But again, that's just a report. CBS TV is reporting that at this point.
Well, you were close to the event. You saw Jim Brady get shot. Or did you not?
I did not see him get shot. I saw him moments after he fell. There were 6, as I reconstruct it in my mind, I'm told by others who were outside of the Hilton Hotel for the entire volley of gunfire, that there were 6 shots. As I approached the scene, I heard 3. I presume I was there for the last 3 shots, and I believe that Brady was one of the last ones to be shot.
Bill, who else was in that presidential party leaving the Washington Hilton? We know Brady, of course, and the president.
Jim Brady, presidential assistant Mike Deaver, deputy spokesman Larry Speaks, Dave Prospery, the assistant press secretary, Secret Service men. I did not see Ed Meese or Jim Baker there. And, you know, it's an interesting thing. We were all commenting about how many Secret Service agents there were, how many more than normal. And I was saying that it was my understanding that with the size of the crowd, they increased the security. So I would say security was about as tight as it could be.
Well,
which points up, if I can make one point, that if somebody wants to shoot the president, it makes you wonder what you can do about it.
Well, John Kennedy said it before he was assassinated. There really isn't a thing you can do about it.
That's right.
For the nut out there, the fanatic who is determined to risk his own life to do that. Mrs. Reagan was not at the hotel at the time of the shooting, we understand.
No, she was at the White House and went to the hospital shortly thereafter.
This buildup of Secret Service people, possibly they've been tipped off. There have been reports in the past, of course.
Well, I don't think it had to do with any indication that something like this was going to happen. I think if there had been the slightest indication that something like this was going to happen, the speech would have been called off. That would have been the end. Yeah. I think the extra security that we noticed was simply in response to the large crowd. There were 3,500 people at the union gathering, the trade union gathering, to see the president, and I suspect that it was just in response to having to deal with more people than usual.
Well, updating you, quoting CBS, they are reporting that Jim Brady, the president's press secretary, has died of the gunshot wound that he sustained in the head. We will attempt to get confirmation of that from Ross Simpson at George Washington University Hospital, the same hospital where President Reagan is now undergoing surgery to have a small caliber slug removed from his chest. Anything else you've been able to pick up from the White House briefing room, Bill?
Not at all. Things are pretty quiet, as again I say, because I suspect the president is in surgery.
Alexander Haig, at the briefing which you attended, said, I guess he indicated at least, that foreign leaders, foreign capitals have been informed, but what can you tell them, right? I mean...
That's it. It's just that, well, I guess you can reassure them that we are in control, that just because there has been an attempt on the life of the President of the United States, that our constitutional system provides for a continuity, and reassure them that this does not mean an overthrow of the government, a change. And this may seem like a strange point to make for us in this country, but to other countries around the world where the government can topple in a matter of minutes, that is not such a strange reassurance. So I suspect that those are the kinds of things, that everything is under control, that we're things are not going to change as a result of this incident. At least the government is not going to change.
But it sounds like a broken record, doesn't it? We've heard it too often
tragic
in recent history.
Record.
Is Chancellor Schmidt in town?
No, he is not in town. As a matter of fact, I happen to know for a fact that he's not, because the president spoke with him by phone this morning.
Well, we saw the report, the agreement on Poland, and I just I only scanned it, and I kind of thought that maybe he was a White House visitor at the time.
No, this was an overseas call. I believe the Chancellor's father had just died, and it was basically a consolation call, and it grew into something about Poland afterwards.
Yeah. We found out from the Pentagon that the alert status of U.S. armed forces around the world remained at normal peacetime readiness today, despite the shooting and wounding of President Reagan. I would doubt there would be any other news that would come from the Defense Department. Only the Strategic Air Command and U.S. forces in South Korea were at the routine heightened state of alert, which has increased intelligence watch and strengthened security measures. That's from the Pentagon. And there's been a spate, a flood of congressional and Washington reaction to the tragedy or near tragedy. We haven't heard anything from foreign capitals because obviously they want to wait for the word, as we do, from George Washington University Hospital to see if the president pulls through. Bill, are you going to stick around there for a while? And
I will. I'm going to make my customary trip to the lower press office to check and see what's going on.
Well, Larry Speaks is on the premises, I gather.
He certainly is. He's up in the Speaks. The whole press staff is here. I think Speaks was at the hospital earlier, but Lynn Nofsiger, I guess, so you have to ask Ross Simpson, is taking over that end of it.
Yeah. I hope that Ross checks in soon, because we're desperate for confirmation or rejection of that report that Jim Brady is.
I know the president's brother has been called by the White House. The press people say that they've called Neil Reagan, advised him of the situation. No word again yet if Neil Reagan is flying in. Vice President Bush into Andrews Air Force Base, 6:30, 7 o'clock. Is that what you hear this evening? Something like that?
Yeah, I've heard anywhere between 6:30 and 8, but if he left Texas, about an hour ago, I should think it would be on the short side of 6.
Yeah.
At Andrews, you say? Huh?
At Andrews, I understand. Yeah, well, although I don't know that the coverage will be open, I suspect he'll come right here, and that'll be hop in the helicopter and fly right to the South Lawn, much as the president does when he returns.
Well, it's a vigil, and we're going to be manning that vigil. You will, and it's one of the sadder assignments, obviously. Well, let's hope it ends positively, and it all hinges on the president's remarkable constitution to withstand the major surgery which he is now undergoing at George Washington.
I'll be in touch with you later, then.
Thank you very much, Bill. The president's daughter, Maureen Reagan, who's a talk show host in Los Angeles, was described as being in a state of shock by an official. The Reagan's younger son, Ron, who dances for the Joffrey Ballet in New York, was told of the shooting in Lincoln, Nebraska, where he is to dance with his company. He planned to fly to Washington. Of course, the entire Reagan family will be here, those who already haven't arrived. We're waiting for word from the hospital. Do we have any report? We have it confirmed by both the Associated Press and the United Press International. The presidential press secretary, Jim Brady, has died of his gunshot wound. All right, Bill, I guess you have the same confirmation at the White House.
Just walked out of the booth just a few minutes ago, and an official who did not want to be identified said that, yes, in fact, the report is true, that our presidential spokesman, James Brady, has died of the gunshot wounds he received this afternoon at the Hilton Hotel.
The same spokesman have anything to say about the president, by any chance?
No, he was not in a very talkative mood, as you can well expect. The mood around here is somber. There was at first, when things were first beginning to break, kind of well, I don't want to say electricity, I don't want to convey excitement or joy in any way, but a frenzied kind of atmosphere. And now that the scene has shifted to George Washington Hospital, the mood here is somber, and it's all of a sudden beginning to sink in. You know, these things happen, bing, 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 you react, and it takes sometimes an hour or two to figure out just what has happened, and to just assess the dimensions of it. When the news of Brady, of course, is a very shocking development for the people here. Everybody worked very closely with him. Very likable man, a man I got to know very well on the campaign, and just a delightful person, and
probably the most popular and most respected of the press people that have served in recent administrations.
Certainly the most popular.
Yeah.
And
how old was he, Bill? A young man, wasn't he?
I think, yeah. I think I'm trying to put a 38 sticks in my mind, but don't quote me on that. Maybe he was a little older than that, but I don't think he was 40.
You know, the shuffling through my papers here, the wire services, as is their custom, their unfortunate but necessary function to prepare obituary material in advance.
Mm-hmm.
They did run quite a bit of information on Jim Brady, and of course I can't find that now, but we liked him, we admired him, and he's dead. Victim of a gunshot wound to the forehead by an assailant who is now in police custody. Bill, you're going to just continue holding the fort at the White House?
Will do.
All
Will
right.
do.
Thank you very much. All three television networks reported that White House Press Secretary James Brady died from bullet wounds, and we have an emphatic denial, however, on Brady's death from White House aide Lynn Nofsinger, who is extremely close, of course, to everything that's important at the White House. Nofsinger, as of 4 or 5 minutes ago, was emphatically denying that Jim Brady was dead. Television networks, the AP and UPI, are all reporting that Jim Brady, Presidential News Secretary, died of his gunshot wound. However, the White House aide Lynn Nofsinger says that he is still alive. We just don't know. We'll have to get the report probably from the hospital or a confirmation from a White House source perhaps a little later. We're just passing the information on as we get it. We have conflicting reports on whether Jim Brady is alive or dead. We do know that President Reagan is under the surgeon's knife right now at George Washington University Hospital, where doctors are attempting to remove a small caliber slug from his left chest area, close to the heart, danger of internal bleeding, and also, of course, the potential of trauma and all kinds of things that could happen to anybody who is shot at close range. So you have everything that we have. We have one possible fatality as a result of that tragedy in front of the Washington Hilton this afternoon. Jim Brady, who has been listed as having succumbed by several sources. However, those reports have been emphatically denied by the White House. We have a president of the United States who is undergoing surgery. We have a Secret Service agent who is in critical condition, and we have a Washington, D.C. policeman who is in serious condition. All four victims shot down by a 22-year-old man who presently makes his home in Colorado. He is a graduate of the elementary and high school system of Highland Park, Texas. Mutual Radio quotes an unidentified hospital doctor as saying the bullet missed the president's heart by an inch. The network quoted the doctor as saying the bullet struck several arteries, filling part of the chest cavity with blood. And we know where we got that from. That was our own Ross Simpson, who is at George Washington University Hospital, waiting for a briefing, any kind of report on the fact that the president has left the operating room and has been returned to his room for the post-operative recovery phase. The operation that the president is undergoing could last, as we say, anywhere up to 4 hours, perhaps even longer, depending on what the doctors determine, what they find when they open his chest. We have had nothing from the hospital to indicate the president is anything other than the stable condition that he was reported in earlier. He was walking around with that slug in his chest. He actually walked into the hospital. He retained his consciousness right up to the time that he was given the anesthetic for the operation. A very talented and extremely able team of cardiac... I'm hesitating because Larry Speaks is about to begin at the White House, and let's go to the White House live, and Larry Speaks.
That his condition remains good. As far as the report about Jim Brady, it is untrue, and he is in serious condition. Thank you.
We just caught the tail end of it. Actually, we didn't miss anything. We got what we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
The president's condition remains good.
It's the Brady thing, Jim. that confuses us here.
Bill, are you on? I guess
Yes,
you
I'm
are.
here, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It's the Jim Brady thing that confuses us. It's very good confusion, very good news, but you can see how events in the raw, how things can happen.
Well, we have
official
both.
Just a few moments ago, with a very somber look on his face, said no. He had been told that James Brady was dead, and that was that. All of a sudden here, now it's in serious condition, and serious condition is not even as severe as critical condition.
Yeah.
So here, all of a sudden, the report has jumped up a couple of notches.
You got both Speaks and Nossinger saying
no.
Saying no.
So, well, thankfully saying no.
And serious is a lot better than critical.
Yeah, assuming he understands and this is something else in interpreting this, assuming he understands, he may not be talking in hospital terminology. He may be just talking just saying, well, he's seriously hurt without understanding the implications of serious, critical, grave, and the hospital jargon.
Bill, we joined Speaks a little late. We don't know whether he said all we caught was that the president's condition is good.
It's
right?
good. That's all he said. He had walked out on the podium just a few moments before you clipped in with him, and I don't believe you missed. I'll tell you what we can do. We can go back to the top of that briefing, I think, just a second, and pick it up for you between now and 5:30, so we get everything together. Here's Larry Speaks' statement from the top.
Okay.
Still in surgery, and will be for a while. But the doctors in a preliminary report to Mrs. Reagan have just assured her that his condition remains good. As far as the report about Jim Brady, it is untrue, and he is in serious condition. Thank you.
Well, two pieces of very good news.
Yes, it is. Assuming if it is serious condition, if he's talking in hospital terms, and that is a big development.
Yeah.
And a very welcome one. Back to you.
And the other, of course, terribly important piece of news is that the president remains in good condition. That information has been communicated to Mrs. Reagan, who's at George Washington University Hospital with her husband. The president remains in surgery. We have no indication from the White House when he'll be out of it. We had heard from Mutualist Ross Simpson at George Washington earlier, perhaps within the hour, that the operation could go anywhere from an hour to 4 hours. The doctors are saying that the bullet struck several of the president's arteries, filling part of the chest cavity with blood. We'd heard earlier that the president suffered the collapse, partial collapse at least, of one of his lungs. And the doctor again says that the surgery began around 4 o'clock Eastern Time, which was about an hour and a half ago, and would take 1 to 4 hours. So it's a vigil. We're just going to have to wait. And all we can do is continue to recap past events, and as soon as it happens, as soon as we have any break, any knowledge on the president's condition, of course, we will speed it to you over these Mutual Network stations. President is in surgery at George Washington University Hospital. There was a frightening report broadcast by all 3 television networks within the past 15 minutes that Jim Brady, who had suffered a gunshot wound to the forehead, had succumbed to that wound. However, 2 top White House aides, Lynn Nossinger and Larry Speaks, both emphatically denied that Jim Brady is dead. In fact, Speaks at his briefing described Brady's condition as serious. And as Bill Grudy, Mutualist man at the White House, points out, if that were, in fact, medical terminology, that's good news. If it were layman's terminology, well, who knows? Serious, of course, could go either way, but it's a lot better than grave or critical. So let's hope. Let's hope for the best on Jim Brady. And Mutual will be breaking for the network half-hour news in about 30 seconds, and we want you to know that we are going to stay with the story until there is a resolution to this dramatic and potentially tragic event that occurred at the Washington Hilton Hotel this afternoon, the shooting of the President of the United States, who is now in surgery. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.